Yeah, Messy.
Okay, now let's start. What do you think?
There we go.
The plate's not going to stay with the bagel anyway.
No.
He's good.
Like that? What do you think?
That's great. That's perfect.
Okay.
Okay, let us begin.
Oh,
I think we have one more person joining us. At least, or maybe two. But we'll begin for now. Messy, you want to give the class? Or you want to go to mommy?
She needs a nap. There you go. That's what she's telling us. I got cream cheese all over my hands.
Okay, so the joke goes that Bob overheard Randy saying to someone, I'm afraid that after I pass, Bob is going to sell my pocketbooks for what I claim they cost.
Gotcha.
Was that too deep?
Yeah, that was too deep for me. Run that by me again.
Too early in the morning?
So,
Bob?
Let's move to page 210.
So the claim for the pocketbooks, like, they claim the value's higher. It's afraid he's going to go out now, make all that money.
So page 210, we're having an exercise here, a quick exercise, where we're going to write the 3 ways this course enhanced your life. So I'll give you a couple minutes for that. You can write the 3 ways you feel this course enhanced your life. And I'll take if someone wants to share one. I'll take it.
Just basically learn what happens after death.
Want to share something?
one of them is, I don't know which one to pick, but it's really the connection to how Judaism plays in the soul.
Plays in the cell. Okay.
I didn't name a specific thing. It was more that, for me, it helped me address things that I've been holding on to about my dad. And also, putting things in perspective for me, my neighbors, my friends, family,
Right.
my son
Right.
going into the IDF, things to think about. I had the son moving into Manhattan. They both look pretty dangerous and
Sure.
exciting. So just in general, just how the whole perspective, I think it was important. It's important that I started learning, because that foundation, I think, it gives you just makes it easier to think about and talk about the topic that none of us want to talk about, because we only talk about it when it happens,
Sure.
and that's not healthy.
Right.
So,
Right.
That's great.
For me, it's just also the connecting with Judaism to get more involved and more understand different aspects.
Right. General learning. Okay, that's great. So something that a few things that we've touched upon, which perhaps mitigate our fear of death. Going back to the very beginning of this course. I don't know if we remember this anymore. So number 1, we have, I'm going to turn off the light. The soul is the real me and is eternal. So I don't know if that's any better. But the soul is the real me and is eternal. That was the first point. The second point being that the body is a temporary container for the soul. So death doesn't mean the end. And really, life is about the soul, not about the body. And finally, the soul experiences great pleasure back in its native habitat. So the soul's in a better place. All those things are things that I think perhaps help us with the fear of death and thinking about our mortality. Okay, so here comes the next exercise on page 211, which is, why is thinking about death crucial to living a life of meaning? Or perhaps you could think about a benefit that you gain from pondering death, there's actually an app called WeCroak. And the app has a few million downloads. And what the app does is for $99 sorry, you get a three times a day reminder that you're gonna die. The reminder,
Something for everyone.
the reminder looks like this. Don't forget you're gonna die. Swipe to see the quote. So there's a small quote, and
that's what it's called.
and it's a death reminder, and apparently this is something which is helpful for people.
Oh, I absolutely.
What is that called?
We
We
croak.
croak.
See, it's right up there.
We croak.
So give yourself a minute to write on 211 some of the benefits that you might have from contemplating mortality. Benefits of contemplating mortality. Okay, so we're gonna start with text 1 on 211. Joanne, go for it.
There is no exercise or reflection as potent, perhaps, as contacting one's ending. In confronting our own passing, we are better able and more willing to help others see the power of awareness of that which is inevitable, death, helping us to wake up to the tender colors of life and personal creation. In contemplating our own end, we recognize that there is still time for life in whatever time is left. Values are there to be lived until the last inevitable moment. To acknowledge this is freeing.
So some benefits of contemplating mortality might be prioritizing and retain focus, recognizing that life has an end and therefore get things moving, avoid foolish mistakes, seize and embrace every moment, live life more fully, and life is more meaningful, not just functional. So it's not just about going through the days and never ending, but there's a meaning, there's a purpose, there's an end. Let's see the Jewish view on this. As it is, the Jewish view obviously helps us with this, particularly because when not believing in afterlife, then saying that life has an end is saying life is worthless. But when you believe in afterlife, life having an end actually says that life is meaningful. It's not an end and then it ends, but it's an end and we move on. This is temporary. Let's make the best of every moment that we have. So let's move on to page 212, text 2.
Like when they say that person that they lived a life worth living.
Right. So we'll talk a lot about that today. That's going to be the main focus. I'll have Tommy, if you could read text 2A and text 2B on page 212 and 213. So we have here a verse from the Psalms, as well as the Talmud explains this verse from the Psalms. Go for it.
Be agitated and do not sin. Verbalize within your hearts, upon your beds, and forever silent. We should always agitate our good inclination against our evil inclination. As it is stated, being agitated is not a sin. If this vanquishes the evil inclination, all is good. But if not, we should occupy ourselves with Torah study, as it is stated. Verbalize within your hearts. If this vanquishes it all, but if not, we should recite the Shema, as it is stated upon your beds. If this vanquishes it, all is good. But if not, we should remind ourselves of the day of death as it is stated in Forever Sound.
Thanks.
This is
Good morning.
Good morning.
this is for you.
Oh, thank you.
You can
My
pass.
sincere apologies. My daughter came as a guest visit.
No problem.
Oh, that's always fun.
The 20, yes.
You never see
To
another
drop
bag.
off her. Exactly.
You can introduce yourself.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Justine.
I'm Barbara Ann.
Barbara Ann, nice to meet
Joanne.
you. Joanne.
Tommy.
Tommy.
And Connie's on the phone.
Okay.
Look at that at the same time.
We have another 3 people that didn't make it today. You can help yourself to a bagel or to coffee, tea, whatever you'd like.
Thank you.
Please enjoy. We are on page 213, and we are kind of revisiting some of the things that we've learned about the meaning of afterlife and the fact that there's an end and what that means to us and what are the benefits of contemplating an end. So there's actually this powerful story that I've read that Rabbi Shimshon Wertheimer was ordered by the Kaiser to jot down his entire estate, everything that he owned. He should write it on paper, what he's worth. And when the Kaiser looked at it, he said, "What do you mean? You have this, you have that, it's not on the paper." And Rabbi Shimshon said, "All those things you could take away from me. They're not mine." So he said, "So what did you write on the paper?" And he said, "I wrote whatever I gave to charity. What I gave to charity, you cannot take away from me. That's what's mine." And kind of thinking about that is, I think, brought this idea home that we're going to be talking about. What's the real meaning of life? And contemplating mortality makes us wonder and makes us think about why we're really here and what life is really all about. And here is a short video, which I think will give us some insight on that. Enjoy. I hope there's sound.
Dynamite, from the ancient Greek term for power, is a potent material indeed. But a person can hardly encounter a more powerful motivator to plan for his day of death than the opportunity to read his own obituary in the media. Alfred Nobel was a 19th century Swedish chemist and engineer with 350 different patents. He owned 90 factories that manufactured armaments and was the inventor of dynamite. His brothers Ludwig and Robert Nobel were tycoons with oil fields along the Caspian Sea. Alfred invested in his brother's enterprise and he grew ever wealthier. Then, in 1888, Ludwig Nobel died suddenly while on a visit to Cannes, France. The passing of one of the Nobel magnates was exceptionally newsworthy. In their haste to hammer out the headlines, the French newspapers misidentified the deceased, mistakenly reporting that Alfred Nobel had died. Alfred was shocked to read of his own passing. He was deeply disturbed at the far from flattering obituaries. Bold black headlines screamed, "The Merchant of Death is dead." The fine print was no better. Dr. Alfred Nobel, who became rich by finding ways to kill more people faster than ever before, died yesterday. Alfred was sobered by an experience afforded few. Is this how I will be remembered when my time comes, he wondered? Will I be forever tainted as the merchant of death? Historians speculate that Alfred, determined to improve his genuine obituary by improving his lasting effect on humanity, took steps while still hale and hearty to ensure that mankind would remember him as an everlasting contributor to the advance of civilization and quality of life. On November 27, 1895, Alfred Nobel signed his last will and testament, designating 94% of his vast fortune to the creation of the Nobel Prizes. To this day, his name is synonymous with the advance of science, medicine, literature, and world peace. All it took to transform a merchant of death into an angel of progress and peace was a moment of serious reflection on mortality and its consequences.
Very interesting.
I did not know that.
No, I did not.
What?
That?
It's an amazing life story. Went to the Nobel Prize Institute in Oslo.
Oh, really?
He talked about how he wanted to give back for everything, all the badness that he created.
Wow. Wow. So it seems like we don't actually know if that was the cause for it, but that's what historians
sounds that way.
speculate to be the cause for that turnaround. Very interesting. So here is another, and we didn't do this in a few weeks, but there's a video meditation which I think will help us get to where we're going with this conversation. So sit back and enjoy.
For our meditation reflection for this final lesson of the Journey of the Soul course, we're going to take a meditation straight from our sages, from Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, which tells us to meditate upon three things. Imagine, if you will, that there's an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and all of your deeds are written in a book. Now, that's something that for centuries would have taken imagination. But in our day and age, it doesn't take any imagination at all. Because we know that everything is seen, heard, and recorded. What we're going to do now is imagining ourselves at the end of our lives in the editing room, so to speak, with all the footage, all of the film, all of the recordings, every moment of our lives. It's there for review, to rewatch, to relive. Imagine yourself now looking back through your life, watching the real-time movie of every single second. See yourself in every place where you've been. Every person you've ever met, even if you passed them in an elevator for 5 seconds. And now, let's start to edit and form our highlight film. And of course, what does a highlight film mean? Now that the soul has left the body, the highlights are not which restaurants I ate at or where I went on vacation. The soul now has moved on from a body. The highlights are, what good did I do in this world? Who did I love? Who did I help? Start to imagine your life. Start to reflect on the real highlight film. Those small fleeting moments that were over in seconds, but last forever. Who did you affect? Who did you help? How did you make the world a better place? And now realize that we're not editing just yet. We're still filming. We're still making the movie. Imagine yourself now, you're still filming the movie. Visualize it. You're in the director's chair. What scene will you direct? Take a moment to visualize and reflect.
Okay, so the question that I'm going to ask you now, after that, is ask yourself, what do you value more, life or money?
Oh, not me, honey.
The great joke, the same Bob and Randy that we spoke about before. So they would every year go to the fair, and there was this great helicopter ride, and Bob would always tell Randy, "Let's go get a helicopter ride," and Randy would say it's $10, and $10 is $10. So they wouldn't take it. And finally, one year they come back, and Bob says, "Listen, Randy, I'm 86 years old. I don't know if I'm ever gonna come back here again. Let's just do the helicopter ride." And Randy says, "But it's $10. And $10 is $10. So sure enough, the helicopter guy hears this conversation, and he says, "You know what, I'll make a deal with you. If you guys are able to take the entire ride without making a peep, then it's free. If you guys make one sound, it's $10. So sure enough, they get onto that helicopter, and he's making flips and circles, and he's doing, every trick he has in the book, and it's quiet, it's silent. Finally, he puts down that helicopter, and he comes in, and he looks at Bob, and he says, "Wow, I'm impressed." And Bob says, "I was really gonna say something when Randy fell out, but $10 is $10. So turn to page 214, and let's take a minute to ask yourself, what is that? Why do you value what you value? Do you value time or money? And time or money is the question. And why do you value the one you value? And I don't know if should we go around the room and ask them?
I'm fine. I have a big mouth, that I'm transparent.
Is that something that gives you lines to answer? No, you don't write it in, right?
No.
So the question is, do you live like that? That's the question. Do we live like that?
I do.
You do.
Yes, I do.
So I think that one of the consequences of avoiding our own mortality is sometimes we tend to forget. It's not part of this slide, but I have a great, I have a great recording here, which I think you guys will enjoy. Give me a second, let me find it. There's a sound.
Got a match? There? Yes, I have one right here. Don't make a move. This is a sticker. What? You pay me.
Wait, that sounds
Put down
like...
that gun. Shut up. Now, come on. Your money or your life? Look, bud. I said your money or your life. I'm thinking it over.
Right. The question is, would you give up a day? Someone says, someone tells you, well, I'll, either give me $1,000 or spend the day on, someone says, I'll pay you $1,000 for spending a day on the couch doing nothing. Right? This becomes the question, what do we value and what do we see as something that's, dispensable versus something which is indispensable? And the reason why on a daily basis, we often will end up viewing money more valuable than time is because we don't view time as something that's going to end. Money has an end, but time is not seen as something that will end. Time seems endless, and that's why what's another day worth? So join me on page 215, text 3. It's Justine, is that it?
Yes.
So go for it. 215, if you don't mind reading text number 3.
Folks fret over lost time and fail to fret over lost time. But money provides no reprieve, while time is impossible to retrieve.
So you want me to answer answer your question before.
Go for it.
So I think at times time is indispensable. You know, you want as much time as you possibly can, but in certain circumstances, money can help to help others. So I think as me getting 63 years old, you know, I'm not 30-something years old anymore, so whatever I want to do, really need to enjoy this time and you know, do things that I haven't done and maybe take some time off. But at the same time, because of what's in me, I do need to start a company where I can help others. So
You're gonna help
time
others.
is, you know, so that's where the money comes in, because in order for me to help others,
Okay.
I have to have some money to start something to be really great.
Sure. So let's.
As long as she's smiling.
She's doing something else.
Hey.
So let's
Oh, there she is.
let's take some time to talk about some of the consequences of avoiding our own mortality. So number one, when avoiding our own mortality, we end up focusing on selfish desires and aspirations, very much focusing on ourselves. Time becomes dispensable. Time doesn't have its value. Procrastination, so the concept of not getting to what needs to get done is because we look at time as something which is endless, so we push it off what we have to do. If someone told you tomorrow was the deadline, we wouldn't push it off. Disconnection from what life is truly about, and a distraction from our true mission. There's a great story which I actually love, and I learned it from this lesson, I didn't know it before. There was a Jew that had an inn, which he rented from the local pirates, I don't know, landlord. And what would often happen in those days, unfortunately, is if a Jew wasn't able to pay, the landlord would take them and throw them in prison, throw them in their dungeon. And this guy was just lingering in prison forever. And he kept on begging that he should be let out, and finally, the landlord decided that they're going to let him out one day a year. He gets to choose one day a year that he could leave prison. And he's thinking to himself, you know, what should that day be? There's Yom Kippur, there's Rosh Hashanah, there's Purim, there's Pesach, there's so many, you know, his anniversary, there's so many special days in the year. What day, if there's one day that he could leave prison, what day should that be? And he wrote a letter to one of the great rabbis at the time, the Radvaz, and he said, what day is the most important day of the year that I should leave prison? And the Radvaz said, today. He said, if you have the chance to make today a special day, then do it. He says, when it comes to time, there's no such thing as saying tomorrow has more value than today. Today is the most important day of your life. Today is the day that you can make a difference. Don't push it off. Which I think was very powerful. So join me on page 217.
I was going to clean my apartment today, but I've been procrastinating. I feel really guilty about it.
You want to join me?
Oh, no.
I said join me, so she came to join me. We're on page 217, text 5, very, very heavy text. Miles Levin, or Levine, is a 16-year-old in Detroit, and he wrote the following letter. Justine, you can continue for us in text 5. You want to go to Mommy? I think she has a diaper. Go for it, text 5.
I went to the Dragon Range the other day, and I was thinking how you start off with a big bucket of golf balls, and you just start hitting away carelessly. You have dozens of them. Each individual ball means nothing to you. You just hit, hit, hit. One ball is gone and practically inconsequential when subtracted from your bottomless bucket. There are no practice swings or technique evaluations after a bad shot because so many more tries remain. Yet eventually, you have to reach down towards the bottom of the bucket and scavenge for another shot and realize the tries are running out. Now, with just a handful left, each swing becomes more meaningful. The right technique becomes more crucial. So between each shot, you take a couple of practice swings and a few deep breaths. There's a very strong need to end on a good note, even if every preceding shot was horrible. Getting it right at the end means a lot. You know as you tee up your last ball, this is my final shot. I want to crush this with perfection. I must make this count. Limited quantities or limited time brings a new precious value and significance to anything you do. Live every day shooting as if it's your last shot. I know I have to. I found out today the 5-year survival are just 30%. Allowing yourself a moment to contemplate between each response, record 5 meaningful endings in the following statement. Life is too short to...
So I don't know if we paid attention to what just happened. You paid attention. So 16-year-old Miles just found out that day that he had cancer, I believe, and he wasn't going to live another, he, probably was going to pass within 5 years. And he wrote that saying, you're just hitting the balls, you're hitting the golf balls, and then you get to the volume and you're like, wow, I should be paying more attention on the shots that I'm taking. So let us spend a few minutes with this exercise in 218. Life is too short to fill in the blanks. So if someone wants to share something, feel free to. Are we hot? Should I open the window? I think it's
I'd rather be under a palm tree, so temperature doesn't bother me.
Does someone want to share something on from what they wrote?
I think mine feels pretty basic. I don't think I'm writing anything that's so profound, but it's too short to be selfish versus thinking of being with others.
That's great.
It's hard to be alone versus being part of a community. It's too short to hoard versus sharing. Fight versus learning, mentoring, teaching, and loving.
That's really great. Justine, you want to share something?
Life is too short for listening versus talking. Not to tell others how special they are. To forget and to remember. And to help those that are not in our circle that we cannot see.
That's great.
Basically, life is too short, so you need to be kind to others,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to help others, to show love to your partners and family and others. Like that.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Want to share something?
Sure. Mine are very short
Go for
in
it.
terms of they're just really words. But the first one was, don't sweat the small stuff. Don't regret, especially things you can't control. Don't blame. Don't be a victim. And do not love. Have no love. Be loving.
Be loving. Okay, that is great. There's a great story that the Hasidic masters would always say. Feel free to make yourself a bagel or a coffee or something. It's not a true story, but it's a parable that they would bring out, a message of this guy that could never make it in life, and no matter what he did, he tried being a plumber, he tried being a baker, he tried being a garbage collector, he tried everything and anything under the sun, and then nothing worked. Nothing worked for him. He was what we call in Yiddish a shlemazel. And sure enough, one day he gets a dream, and he sees in his dream that there's an island called Diamond Island. And on this island, there's everything, all the diamonds are just sitting around. And, he could go there for a short trip, pick up some diamonds, and head right back home and live a beautiful life. And sure enough, he says, I have nothing to lose. And he goes out looking for Diamond Island. And he follows what he remembers in the dream, and he gets into this boat, and he's looking forward to seeing this island. And sure enough, after some time, he sees glistening, and he's making out this beautiful island. And as they get closer, he can start seeing the diamonds. And eventually, he disembarks onto this diamond island, and he is excited. But he says, you know what? This is such a nice day. I'm not going to just spend my day collecting diamonds. He picks up a few diamonds, and he makes his way to the nearest restaurant. And he walks into the restaurant, and he orders everything under this, all the beautiful delicacies that he only could dream of ever ordering, because he's a rich man now. And sure enough, they bring him all the food, and he eats it, and it's delicious, and he's about to leave, and they bring him his bill, and he says, okay, this seems like a lot, but not a big deal. He takes out one of his diamonds, and he gives it to the waiter, which looks at him like he fell off the moon. Like, what are you doing? And he said, don't worry about it, just keep the change. And he's like, no, this is worthless here. We don't take diamonds as currency. He says, so what's currency? He says, well, currency is chicken fat. Chickens are not very common here, especially chicken fat, which is schmaltz, right? Schmaltz in Yiddish. And he says, we take schmaltz, that's our currency. So he said, I don't got any schmaltz. So he said, I don't know what to do. So he goes to the manager, and they say, you're going to got to clean the dishes to pay off your debt. And sure enough, he spends a couple hours there cleaning the dishes. Turns out he's great at cleaning the dishes. And he gets hired as the dish cleaner. And from there, he goes on to become, a waiter, and then he becomes the chef. And then he becomes the owner of the restaurant. Sure enough, he opens up a new restaurant on the other side of town. And before, you never know it, this Shlomazel became this whole big shot on Diamond Island. And finally, he's doing very well for himself. And he decides, it's time to go back to my family. I have a lot of money. I got a lot of schmaltz. And he sells his two businesses, and he packs it all up, and he puts all the schmaltz in these containers. And he gets them onto the boat, and they come back home. And as he comes back home, the family is all excited, and they're smelling. It's like a weird smell. What's the smell? And the schmaltz back in Diamond Island was always kept in a cool space, and over here he's on a boat, and it's hot, and the sun was beating. He didn't care. He's a wealthy man. But he comes home, and his family says, what did you bring us? And he proudly opens up all the barrels, and there's schmaltz. And he didn't bring back one diamond. And the message being that our soul comes down here to this world with a mission and a purpose. And that mission and a purpose is to collect diamonds. And those diamonds are Torah and mitzvot. Those diamonds are being kind to another person, serving God, making a difference in this world. And those are things that we cannot do up there. Those are things that are diamonds up there. But over here, they're everywhere. And what becomes a novelty in this world, that we look, what makes us, and what puts money in our bank account is not mitzvos. What puts money in our bank account is money, currency. And sure enough, we start running after the currency. And when we run after the currency, we come back and we're like, look at me, I'm this big shot, I got all this money. And in heaven, they look at you and they say, that's not really worth anything here. That's not worth anything here. So it's hard to remember the diamonds when everyone else is busy with the schmaltz. And growing up, I was told a different story, which is, JLI doesn't bring this, but I think it's a great story as well. Similar beginning, that, you had this Yankel, it's the same Yankel, both of these stories, and he could not find a living, and the whole day he's trying to make $1. And everything in life is about making $1, but he just can't do it. And one day, sure enough, he's walking, and he hears some crinkling, and he looks down, and there's leaves. And he said, you know what, if I can't make dollars, at least I should collect leaves. And sure enough, he starts collecting the leaves. And he's going to his neighbor, he's collecting his leaves. He's going to that guy, he's collecting the leaves from everywhere. And he's putting it in his backyard to the point that there's so many leaves, he would have to pay someone to clean out these leaves. You know, and then one day he's gathering more leaves, as he does for a living, and he notices something green. And he looks down and it's a dollar bill, and he picks it up and he's all excited. He's never held a dollar bill in his life. And finally he says, I'm a leaf collector. What do I need a dollar bill for? And he throws it away. Right? And the message being the same message, which is sometimes we get so preoccupied by doing things that don't have real value that we lose sight of what does have value. And we lose sight of the sense of being sensitive to what life is really all about and what our mission is really all about, because we're busy collecting the leaves. Okay, with that, I end that segment of the course, or of the class, I should say. Which what we did just now, what we walked away with, is after learning for all these weeks about a soul and the value of a soul and what life is really all about, we asked ourselves, what could we take away from that? What's the lesson that we could learn? What do we walk away with from this whole discussion? And the answer is that a number of things. I think the number one thing that we said was to recognize that life is meaningful, that life has a purpose, and to, try to take advantage of what life is really all about. So this takes us to the next part of our class. I'm going to be skipping a little bit in the book, so feel free for yourself in your own time to go back to the part that we'll be skipping. I'm going on to page 226, text 11, and the discussion that we're going to be having now is the whole course, we spoke about death and mortality, and death being something which is coming, and why that's not a bad thing. And the question is death certain? In Jewish belief, is death certain? And the answer...
Body.
What?
Of the body.
Death of the body. And the answer, surprisingly, actually, is no. Right? When Mashiach comes, when the Messiah comes at the end of days, death will not exist anymore. We will forever live in our physical bodies. Not only that, but those that have passed, as mentioned in the past, will return in their bodies.
Question.
Yes.
But if we believe in reincarnation, which body are we coming back in?
So we spoke about that last class. Do you remember that?
Well, that was probably one of my last class was a little confusing.
So the answer we gave in last class is that as much as we believe in reincarnation, but every body has its unique soul. Because everybody has its unique mission.
All the offshoots.
And
So it's
Yeah, all the sparks.
your consciousness,
sparks.
your
Okay.
consciousness will come back in this body because that's the body that consciousness accomplished its mission in. So even though your
Okay.
consciousness is connected to other consciousnesses,
And also, you're trying to, what you didn't do in your first life, you're trying to fix in the second
in the
life.
second life. So if
And then the third life and fourth, so which one you're coming back in is,
whatever you fixed in that lifetime.
yeah.
Correct.
it's
Whatever
also
you-
based upon the mitzvahs.
Correct.
The 613.
Correct. Whatever you accomplished in that lifetime, that aspect of the soul will return in that body.
So you can come back at home.
It's gonna be very crowded.
So
Yes, you think?
So the question is, if we
Give enough love.
believe that death is not a bad thing, which is what our discussion was about the last few weeks, how essentially there is life after death and the soul is bigger than the body, and, at least intellectually, there's no reason to fear death. So in that case, why is death in Torah considered something bad that when the Messiah comes, that's not going to exist anymore? So the question becomes, what caused death? Does anyone know the answer to that question? What's the reason for death in this world? So I'll tell you. The answer to that question is the tree of knowledge. The sin of the tree of knowledge. So when God created the world, he created Adam and Eve. He put Adam and Eve in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden, and he told them that there's one tree that they should not eat from, which was the tree of knowledge. If they would have never eaten from that tree, they would never die. Death did not exist in this world when God created the world. Adam and Eve ate from the tree, and they introduced death to creation. And the question is why? What's the connection between the sin of the tree of knowledge and death? Which will obviously give us life into what death is all about, and therefore why will death not exist when the Messiah comes? Okay, so this is going to be our journey to understand what's the connection between the sin of the tree of knowledge and death. Therefore, what is death all about? Therefore, why is death something which is quote-unquote bad and will not exist when the Messiah comes? So join me on page 226, and B.A., you'll read for us text 11.
The condition of death that was introduced to the world through the sin of the tree of knowledge was a natural consequence of the very sin itself. To explain, life is associated exclusively with holiness. Unholiness, on the other hand, is death. As a result of the sin of the tree of knowledge, unholiness, spiritual death, mingled with the human identity, from which the condition of physical death is a natural, eventual consequence.
Okay, so this is a very deep concept, and I hope I'll be able to properly explain this. So let's begin with this. The body is selfless, or I should say before the sin of the tree of knowledge, our body was a selfless entity, recognizing that its true life is the soul. Therefore, moving right along on this board, I don't know if you could see it, the body's only desire is to do the will of God, the will of its creator. Therefore, the body has no ego. Now, if the body has no ego, and therefore the body is selfless, if the soul is eternal, the body too would be eternal. Let me repeat that. In a time where the body has no ego, the body is utterly selfless, recognizing that its true identity is to be the carrier of the soul, then all it is a carrier of the soul. If the soul is eternal, the body too will be eternal. Meaning, the only thing standing between us and eternal life is the fact that the unity of our body and soul are not perfect. So let's return to what we spoke about earlier. This concept, this confusion of what do I value, time or money, and perhaps money could get in my way, saying maybe money is more important than time, where does that come from? Certainly not the soul. The soul certainly doesn't value money more than time. Our body, our physical existence, does. Now, if our physical existence was in perfect sync with our spiritual existence, that wouldn't happen. We wouldn't have that confusion. We would only value spirituality because we would recognize that our physical existence is only about connecting to spiritual. Physical existence doesn't have its own identity. Now, physicality dies. Spirituality doesn't die. If our physical existence is only about its spiritual being, it would never die. The source of death, The reason for death is ego. Because the reason for death is differentiating, making a divide between our physical existence and our spiritual existence. Angels don't die. Do you know why angels don't die? Because they have no ego. They don't have a self. They'll never do something for self-preservation. Their life is to fulfill a mission, a purpose. That doesn't die. A mission and a purpose doesn't die. Think about an idea. Math, 2 + 2 = 4, will never die because it's not a physical entity, it's a spiritual entity. It has a purpose and a mission which doesn't die. The more we realign ourselves with our mission and purpose, the more we will be able to connect to this idea of ultimately man is not supposed to die, because ultimately our bodies and our souls are supposed to be in perfect sync. So before the sin, our body was selfless. After the sin, so there was no conflict of interest between body and soul. After the sin, our body and soul became misaligned. The body becomes conscious of a self or an ego separate from the soul. As Adam and Eve said, they felt naked. They wanted to cover themselves because they became self-conscious. So the body becomes conscious of a self and an ego. Together with that, the body becomes a source of selfish desires. And therefore, the body can potentially go against God. Now, let us take that to everyday life. How does that affect my day-to-day life? It's very nice to think about that one day will be in a time that death will not exist, and we will not be misaligned, and we will only be living with this truer reality. Today in my life, how could that affect my life? And I'll give one example, and I'll open up the floor to you to give other examples. When eating a piece of cake, so I could choose, we spoke about this in the first class, I think. I could choose to connect to the death of the cake, or I could choose to connect to the life of the cake. Or in other words, I could choose to connect to the soul of the cake or the body of the cake. The soul of the cake would be the life that the cake will give me, the energy that it will give me to make a better place, to be a better person. Or I could choose to connect to the body of the cake, which is the taste or the craving, the calories.
The fat, the sugar.
The fat and the sugar, exactly. So I'm just giving one example. I'd love to hear some other examples here. What are things in our life on a daily basis that we could choose between body and soul, life and death, and we could kind of merge? We could choose to merge that body and soul, or to divide between them.
So one example is, I'm still trying to work to pay bills and things like that, and I always get questioned. Connie is like, do yoga. It's better for your body. You'll be more flexible. You'll feel better. And so I kind of think about things, and I'm like, could do both. Could do, say, yoga, feel great, and at the same time do work. And then my other philosophy is of the tree of knowledge, of things you don't know. So me, I was born in a house that's a sweet tooth. Our cabinets were full of candy. My mom just ate candy, chocolate all her life. Well, me being son and learned that candy is delicious to this day. I believe me going to India was why I ended up becoming a type 2 diabetic, because of high carbs, but this probably had to do with excess candy all my life. So the knowledge is eat less candy and your body will be better.
Right.
So those are my two.
Okay.
I don't think we
Do you have something you want to share?
I was thinking about listening versus talking. Like when you listen, you're more soulful. You listen, you take on other people.
That is great. That is really great. I've mentioned a few times in this course, Manus Friedman says the difference between body and soul is needy versus needed.
Thank you.
Being needy is the body. Being needed is the soul. Being needy means that I'm an accident and everyone is here to serve me. Being needed means I have a purpose and I'm here to serve others. Being needy is very not happy, toxic. Being needed is a happy environment. Being needed is uplifting. You know, when you have a doctor that is in a surrounding of some sort of disease and they're able to heal the patients and not get infected, is because they're living on a soul plane. Because they're so needed, they don't have time to be needy. They don't have time to get infected by the
They
disease.
just bring the diseases back to their kids.
Or they bring it back to their
I-
kids.
I'm sorry.
But that was great. Talking versus listening, that's the same idea, I think.
That's in the fathers of the ethics of our fathers.
Does it say that there?
Yes, it does. It says don't talk too much. Yes,
The
it does.
potion to wisdom is silence.
I lead organizations, and that means that I lead groups of people. And I often find leaders, I don't even like using that word on them, because every department that I've inherited has been full of broken people. And it's just very sad to me. And so it really shaped my leadership style, that I'm there to help them, and then they do what they're supposed to do to help the org. Where a lot of people in my background, they go to be the hero, and they take these damaged people and damage them further, not realizing or not even thinking about them. And that's really what you leave people with. So I go to work, and I've been doing this since I'm 14. I'll do it forever because it's where I have impact, but it also is how I support my family. So it hasn't moved. But when you're there, you have a choice to make all day long and how you're doing it. And I think that has been a profound difference for me over the years. Is I now see these people years later, how they are and how their life trajectory changes. You just realize you have that opportunity. And I just think that's like it's hard to describe to people what the poor leadership is doing without making it seem like you're insulting them and inflating yourself. So it's also very difficult to share these methods in a way that's not egocentric, or at least perceived to be. So yeah, it's definitely something I find interesting to encounter. And I'm just still surprised. I'm surprised that I still encounter it. More so today, if
More
not
so
ever.
today,
Yeah.
I would think so. That's why I became a consultant, because I was always an leader, but I did it also based upon working with people and feeling their vibration. So I'd walk in and I knew something was bothering them, so I'd spend 20 minutes psychologically helping them, and then I would get the work done. But every time I left a place, they basically said, how did you get that person to work? I can't get him to do what his tasks are. What did you do? But for me, because I'm nuts, it drained me. So that's why I became a consultant. Because consulting, I would just say, hey, this is my opinion, do it, you don't do it, it's okay. I will do my job and that. But that's exactly was my experience.
That's great.
And, you know,
It's very draining.
In Judaism,
Very.
a king is the opposite of what we usually think of as a king. And usually a king is
That
perceived...
happy and eating like
Right, is usually a king is perceived as someone which is standing on top and he's controlling and he owns everything. And in Judaism, a king is essentially the slave of the nation, because their life is all about others. And while in truth, being a king, being a bigger person, they would ideally want to have their own life, doing their own thing, not wasting their time with others, but they sacrificed their life for others. You know, the Rebbe, I think, was the greatest example of this, where we saw someone that didn't want the position that he was given. He said so many times, you know, he'd rather just sit in his own study and do his own thing. He didn't like the public eye, and practically he really gave his life that he had no life. And you would talk to him and you would feel no him, you would just feel yourself. I think Jonathan Sacks, or there were others that said the same thing. Jonathan Sacks said that, you know, he's been in the presence of many, many great people. And he said, most great people, you walk out of the room saying, wow, that person is a great person. And he said with the Rebbe, he walked out of the room saying, wow, I'm a great person.
Big difference.
Yes. So death is the separation of the mortal body from the immortal soul. I don't know if anyone remembers the electricity video that we played over here a few weeks ago. Right? And spiritual death
I remember trying
is...
to explain to the refrigerator what happens when it loses electricity.
Exactly. And spiritual death is when body and soul are separated because because of their misaligned values and desires. When the Messiah will come, we will eradicate the cause of death and therefore the effect of death. We will eradicate that misalignment where our body will know that it's about the soul. Our body will know that it's about making a better place. Our body won't have those personal cravings, etc. And therefore, that misalignment won't exist anymore. And as we mentioned, the same thing applies to our life today. We could make that real in our life, where a person have things that are physical and have a superficial dimension to them, like the taste of the cake or the taste of the vegetables. And then there's the soul, which is the true purpose behind it, right? When you have a guy, there's only two of us here in this room, but when you have a guy that is going to work to support his family, but therefore doesn't have enough time to spend with his family, so there's kind of misaligned values there. There's, you went for a purpose and then you got distracted by the externalities of it, by the body of it, and you forgot about the soul of why you're doing this. There's a soul behind it. And if you would align that body and soul, if you bring that together, allowing my business to perfectly express my life and what I really want in life and my love for my family, etc., then there wouldn't be that conflict. There wouldn't be that conflict of interest, and there wouldn't be those hindrances. So, yeah, things that our body are physical properties, taste, smell, appearance, texture, and then you have the soul, which is the ability to sustain, to nourish, and to provide energy. And when we rectify spiritual death, when we value something not for its external properties, but for the ultimate purpose for which it exists, that is the concept of everlasting life. That is the concept of breaking the boundaries of death and connecting to the life of life. Let's turn to page 227, text 12, where we will also be seeing the concept of resurrection, which perfectly aligns with this conversation that we're having right now. Joanne, take it away.
The resurrection of the dead is the foundation of the Torah of Moses. One cannot maintain a connection to the Jewish religion and the Jewish nation without this belief.
Okay, so Maimonides writes the 13 principles of faith. Maimonides writes the 13 principles of faith, and one of those 13 principles we mentioned before is belief in reward and punishment, and we spoke about that in the previous class. Another one of those 13 principles is believing in the resurrection. And the question is, why is resurrection a principle of our faith? You know, it might be something nice that happened, but like, let's say The splitting of the sea is not a principle of our faith. It's a beautiful thing that happened in the past, or leaving Egypt, but why is resurrection a principle of our faith? And the answer is because life is all about resurrection. Every moment in life, every decision that we make, everything that we do, we have the choice between leaving the act dead or resurrecting it, bringing life to it, bringing godliness, a mission, a purpose, something higher, the soul, to the thing that we're doing, whether, like we mentioned before, whether it's eating or sleeping or taking a walk or dealing with family or business. Everything in life, we have the choice of looking at it as a body or looking at it as a soul, keeping it dead or giving it life. There's one of the Mishnahs in Pirkei Avot say that when eating without saying a word of Torah over the food is like eating from the dead, which sounds very extreme, but the message is because there's a spark that exists within this food. There's a soul here. And when you use that opportunity to talk about God, you're bringing energy, you're bringing soul, you're bringing life. That's called resurrection. But when we don't do that, we miss the opportunity of resurrection and it remains a physical, dead entity. That's why resurrection is such a big part of Judaism. And that's what, and the message of resurrection, as we spoke about until now, physical resurrection is again about realigning that body and soul. So again, as we said, the reason for death is because we became egoistic, we became selfish. When that ego will go away, which is what the Messiah is all about, recognizing that our entire life is just about God, that divide between body and soul will not exist. And life will be eternal, and those that have passed will return.
This whole thing is very new to me. Resurrection.
Resurrection.
Not resurrection,
Eternal life.
The Mashiach.
The concept of Mashiach in general.
Yeah.
New
Stories
as in
with it.
from this class, or you've heard of it
I've
before?
heard it before, but not as something like the Jews in general believe that those Jews think that, right? Like I was always told, like that sect of Jews do, but the rest of Jews don't. And I never really understood what the belief was and where it came from. I just never, never.
So there's actually
explored it, so I really
another.
don't know anything about it.
There's another JLI course which goes much deeper
Yeah.
into this whole conversation. Did anyone ever take that course? I forgot what it's called, but there's a whole course that talks about the Mashiach.
Okay.
Can you access them online?
The JLI courses? I don't think so. Maybe recordings. Maybe
Recordings, yes.
you might be able to find recordings.
Okay.
I think it does list out where some courses are being held, and I looked through it briefly.
Right. That's for sure. I could give you a quick rundown about that, which I think is important. We've mentioned that many times, the concept of Mashiach. So God created this world with a purpose. He didn't just create it for fun. He created it with I guess it was fun, but he created it with a purpose. And that purpose, as we're taught, is because he wanted to create a space where he did not exist, that he will be. He wanted to create a home for himself in a physical world. Or in other words, as we've been talking about just now, he wanted to take a entity which is dead and give it life.
I mean, he didn't create us as a joke to see how long it would take us to destroy ourselves.
Correct. Ultimately, the Rambam says that when Mashiach comes, we will not have to work, we will not have to support our families, we will not need to eat or to use the bathroom. We will simply do one thing and one thing only, which is to know the knowledge of God. And if you look around in this world and you see how they're talking about how AI is soon going to take over the market and no one's going to have to work anymore, it's literally this prophecy coming to fruition, where you see this concept of ultimately it's not about humans working. Ultimately, it's about we were sent to this world to humanize the world. You know, like anyone that has a pet knows that a pet is not an animal. a pet is a human animal. The pet was humanized. And that's what we do to all our surroundings. We come in and we humanize it. We build homes and we build beautiful spaces where we live, and we humanize our surroundings. And ultimately, it's not just about humanizing it, but it's about bringing godliness there. And when we do an act with mindfulness, whether it's putting on tefillin, or lighting Shabbos candles, or keeping kosher, or keeping Shabbos, or anything that brings godliness into the world, we are having a part in this purpose of creation. We're having a part in making this world a better place, making this place a home for God. That's the language. A home for God. When that happens, so A, God will have a home. B, we will enjoy that home with him. So we will be able to bask in his presence and simply enjoy him. Ultimately, it says that when Mashiach comes, it says that Mount Sinai was the chuppah between the Jews and God. And when Mashiach comes, will be the actual wedding. So the chuppah happens before the wedding, and then you have the wedding, which is God saying, you brought me home, now let's live together. And I don't know what that feels like, what that exactly means. It's obviously a very, very different reality, but it's a beautiful reality. It's a reality which will be peaceful, where there won't be any conflict, there won't be any strife, there won't be any envy, there won't be any jealousy. All those bodily attributes will not exist. And the only thing that will exist is we will live with our soul and with the recognition of God.
So does that mean that the life beings on earth today, if they really did, it's because your whole purpose is God, okay, and is to pray, and is to do all the mitzvahs, and is to light the candles. If everybody started doing that, do you think that then maybe...
Definitely.
Okay, so
Definitely.
it's
up to us.
It's up to us.
Definitely. The Rambam says, Maimonides says, that a person should always view the world and themselves on an equal balance. And the next good deed that you're going to do will tip the scale. So when we're making decisions, should I go to the kosher restaurant or the non-kosher restaurant? Having that in mind, my good deed will tip the scale. Doing one more mitzvah will make the difference. I went to someone's house on Hanukkah. I wrote about this in my email. I went to someone's house on Hanukkah, and we lit the menorah together. Someone here in Manhasset. And he was very embarrassed that I came by, and because he didn't really have a Jewish home, and his wife is Catholic, and there was a lot of Catholic things all around the house, and he wasn't very proud of what I was seeing. And then this was the second night of Hanukkah. I asked him, have you lit the menorah on the first night of Hanukkah? And he said no. And that just added to his guilt. Jews are very good at having guilt.
Yeah.
They say the great story, what expresses the ultimate Jewish mom's guilt? So they say the story that the guy had his birthday. So mom sent him 2 beautiful shirts as a birthday present. On Monday, mom invited him over for dinner. So he takes one of the shirts that mom gave him and he puts it on for the dinner. He walks into the house, mom takes one look at him and says, what was wrong with the other shirt? So that's Jewish guilt. So he was feeling very guilty, he was feeling very uncomfortable. And we lit the menorah, and it dawned on me as we lit the menorah together, I'm feeling like I'm this rabbi, and I'm bringing the message to him, and even though he's so far, and I'm inspiring him, etc., etc. And then I'm thinking to myself, who's doing the mitzvah here? He's doing the mitzvah. He's lighting the menorah. And the Rambam says that we don't know what action is going to tip the scale, what action is going to change history forever, which action is going to bring the Messiah. It could very well be that this action of him lighting the menorah is going to bring the Messiah. And then what's going to happen then? I'm going to be the one standing there and being like, I was there, but it wasn't me. It was him. So it's not about who we are. It's about what we do. Going back to the message before about today is the most important day of your life. When you find yourself in a situation, no matter what it is, spiritually, physically, God put you there. You didn't put yourself there.
Oh, well,
God-
thanks. Sorry.
God put you there. And the question is only, what are you going to do with that opportunity? So that, often people will say,
When it doesn't feel like an opportunity.
Yeah, when one doesn't feel like, today just made me see my opportunity just before about what is my ending of my life is going to be. And I know what that purpose is, but I'm still having trouble. That's why I'm going to that class. I'm having trouble.
but the message that I could tell you now, and I'm not here to answer your questions, but
Yeah, I know. Well, I won't tell you what your father said, so.
the message that I'm here to tell you now is whatever the struggle is, including that struggle, including the fact that it's a struggle, including the fact that you don't know how to get past it, that was given to you by God, which means that He believes, and when He believes, it means He knows, that you could get past it. And you getting past it is fulfilling your mission. As we spoke about in the last class about what's the word? What was the last class?
Reincarnation.
Reincarnation, right? How do you know what your purpose is in this world? What your purpose is, something that's difficult for you. When you encounter something that seems to you as way too big of a struggle, why did God give this to me? I don't know the answer. But I know that He gave it to you because He needs you to have it.
Thanks.
He needs you to have it, but recognize the power in that. Recognize the reason why I am struggling with whatever I'm struggling with. It's not because it's my struggle. It's because it's His perfection. I have the opportunity to give Him something, to do something in this world that was never able to be done in history. Recognizing that give me 1 minute, recognizing that my challenge is not my challenge. It's not an issue that I have. It's an opportunity. It's a gift that was wrapped up with a lot of wrapping, which might seem annoying to unwrap, but it's a gift that God has given me, which is to actually truly make a difference. If I didn't have this struggle, if I had the perfect life of the other guy, I wouldn't have to exist. The reason why I exist is because I'm unique. I'm unique with my struggles. I'm unique with my mission. I'm unique with my wrapping paper. And the purpose is to unwrap it and find the gift, which is hidden within that mission and purpose and that struggle.
Here's the trick question. What are other people's missions and gift in relationship to you? Because what was it regarding my son that, you know what happened, right?
Sure.
So what was his, 29 years? Where does the relationships to all of us, like here we're talking about just ourselves.
Just yourself. So,
and where does all that, and that's what I'm trying to understand too, because yes, I'm going deeper than the Judaism part of it, of trying to find out, yes, there are other spirit, and it's not religious, it's more, okay, here is your purpose. And you were given a contract when you came onto this earth. You were given a contract, just like they say when you're born, you choose your parents. I'm throwing out the. So what is it that this human had this experience that then was mine?
So part of belief, which is a very difficult thing to do, but part of belief in the greatness of God is recognizing that not only everything has a purpose, but God is that great that every single aspect of relationships, of things that coincide, the things that happen, every attribute of it is necessary. Every attribute of it needed to happen. So when we are taught that the fact that a leaf on a tree was blown to the ground and made X amount of twirls on the way down is with a purpose and a mission. It's not only that it's a purpose and a mission for the leaf, but there's a separate mission for the person that saw it, and an additional mission for the grass that it fell onto. There isn't just one mission. You know, people during COVID, so various people were saying, oh, the reason for COVID is this, and the reason for COVID is that. And, you know, people were coming out with all these different things that perhaps COVID enhanced about our life. You know, making family life for some people more enhanceable. You know, more to focus on family life. And perhaps it was about focusing on ourselves, and it was about remembering our mortality. And there's so many things that people pointed to. And the question kind of was like, well, if God obviously, if I believe in God, and I believe God did this with a mission and a purpose, so which one was it? Which purpose was it? You know, he hit the whole world with this plague. Who was it for? And the answer is, God is that great that it wasn't for one person. It was for every single person individually. If you were hit by COVID in whatever way you were, whether it was the fear or a loved one or whatever it was, your individual experience of COVID you weren't a fall off of a greater thing that was happening in this world. We don't believe that. If you had an experience, it was personalized because you had to have that experience. Because God needs you with that experience to do what you gotta do, and only by doing what you gotta do will the world be a better place. And if God wanted to create a dwelling place for himself, it's not enough for him to have a bunch of lady Paltiels walking around. And the reason why I know that is because that's not the case. You know, if that was enough, then he would just do that. But he had to have a Joanne and a Tommy and a Justine and a BA. He had to have people, each one with their own individual life, with their individual experience, and they did a mitzvah. They lit the Shabbos candles. They kept kosher. They did whatever they did. You know, they said a nice word. They put on the tefillin. Every action that we do, given the circumstances that we're in, is what accomplishes a dwelling place for God in this world. So we're not an aftermath. We're not an offshoot. We're not a mistake. It's on purpose, and it's perfect, and it's exact, and it's exactly how it is meant to be.
Everybody's not perfect, right?
No, it's
Everyone's not perfect. So you do the best you can, and during the best of your time you're there to do a mitzvah, help somebody, help
exactly.
yourself,
But the best you can. It's not just that it's not perfect;
Right. Yeah.
it's perfect for you.
Yeah.
Right.
And the Rebbe has a beautiful. I'm going to end with this because it's getting late, and I want to play the key points that we learned from today. I mean, there's some of them we didn't cover because there was a lot to cover, so I skipped certain parts. There's an amazing story, which is probably one of my favorite stories, that someone took the Rebbe's time one time, as happened often. And after he had an audience with the Rebbe, maybe it was 40 minutes or whatever it was, he said, "Thank you for your time." Right? And the Rebbe's response was, "My time is not mine for you to think. My time is not mine for you to think. My time was given to me. Don't thank me. It's not my time. It's God's time." You know, and often we say, the question before was, life is too short to, ... And often we say, I don't have time for this, and I don't have time for that. You know what? If we believe in a creator, there's no such thing as I don't have time for. You know why? Because if you don't have time for it, you're not meant to do it. If you don't have time for it, it's not meant for you. If it's meant for you, you have the time. And going back to what Tommy said, it's not just that, you know, we're all imperfect, so we're all going to just do our imperfect best. God created you perfectly with your imperfections. Your imperfections are perfect. And when you do your perfect best, it can't get more perfect than that. If God gave us one day in this world to fill up that day, if I filled up that day with my imperfections, that's perfect, because that's what God gave me. That's all I could do. Okay, let's finish off with this quick recap. And then if people have more questions they could ask. It's going to turn on.
This is going on for
Our exploration of death and the afterlife through the Torah's lens reduces our fear and unease, allowing us to consider our mortality without panic. 2. Some believe that because we eventually die, nothing is overly important. But Judaism insists that because we die, each moment of life is of supreme importance and should be devoted to matters of eternal relevance. Considering our mortality motivates us to focus on what really matters. 3. Our natural illusion of immortality spurs us to consider time as dispensable. We care more about wasted money than wasted time. Reflecting on life's finitude replaces this illusion with an urgency to take advantage of each moment. 4. We are designed to be productive beings. Retirement is not a Jewish concept. As our brute powers wane, we should transition to mentoring, sharing our wisdom and experience, etc. 5. Before the sin of the tree of knowledge, the body was the soul's extension, and their desires were synced. Sin destroyed that dynamic, causing spiritual death, the misalignment of body and soul. Physical death is an outgrowth of spiritual death. 6. We rectify spiritual death by realigning everything with its purpose, ignoring the superficial layers of a thing, its body, and instead focusing on its inner truth and purpose, soul. Upon completing this rectification, physical death will no longer be part of the human condition.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us.
We thank you.
Right.
Yes.
Um,
thank you so much.
I want to take if you could take 2 minutes on page, I don't know, the last page, what resonated with you most? What page was that?
The key point page?
Maybe right before, I think, or right after?
And he said Jews don't believe in retirement. I
Two-
had a chuckle because if you see all the Jewish teachers and they hit that 50 or whatever age of retirement, they believe in it, like wholeheartedly. My whole family were all teachers except me and my brother, and when they all hit retirement, they're like,
They're religious about
they
it.
seem pretty believable.
229 on the bottom. Record the point from today's lesson that resonated with you most. Question, or I don't know if we answered the question already. I am ready to do another follow-up lesson next week with some of the questions that came up that we haven't been able to address. If we have time, maybe we could also address that retirement conversation more at length. Is that something which is of interest? You said you have to see your schedule for next week.
Am I said bye?
So I am available in the Bahamas to be on.